This is pretty weird when you think about it. I'm Chris, this is Offbeat Builds, and today I'm going to show you how to kitbash Plague Marines with 4 different flavours of Contagion. All of these builds started life as Mk3 Marines, because ain't nobody got time to waste removing Gutmouth. Also, they're quite a bit cheaper per model, which is nice. Anyway, let's kick things off with some sort of mechanical infestation. Maybe your version of the Plague Daddy likes things with a mechanical eldritch feel, or just has an overabundance of tubes. After assembling the torso and legs, as dictated in these arcane pictographs, I drilled the lower abdomen to make home for some nice tube-like protrusions. Before getting to the unnatural tentacles, I thought it would be best to add some battle damage while there was nothing blocking the way. And the same logic was applied to the arms, which on the right side came from the Plague Marine kit, and over on the left, I repositioned a Mk3 Marine arm at the shoulder to provide a come at me bro kind of pose, but I left off the hand. When you're infested by some sort of mechanical parasite, hands are a luxury. So, in lieu of digits, our subject got some little mini tentacle probers which I made by twisting together a number of 0.4mm copper wires. These were glued into an appropriate hole in the wrist joint, and once cured, the neat little twists were undone to provide some nice wavy tentacle form before securing the arm to the model. Shoulder pads were next, which are Plague Marine parts and readily available separately on the bits market. Speaking of which, a Plague Marine power pack was also used, which simply required the quick and dirty removal of the locating nub from the heresy body. Now for some mecha tentacles. I've covered making these on the channel before, but as a quick refresher, it's as simple as wrapping a nice, flexible wire around another flexible wire. I've used more of that 0.4mm copper wire because I had it to hand, and copper has all of the desired qualities, but solder does work really well for the wraps too. As an aside, you can do this by hand, but a drill gets the job done a lot quicker, and in a way that will satisfy even the most atrophied soul. Anyway, back to Phil. He looks like a Phil to me. And the newly minted tube tickles were glued in place in his extensive belly button. Once the cyanoacrylate had got over itself, they were formed into curly overlapping form that tried to imply movement, because nobody likes motionless tentacles. I was going to say flaccid there, but I just couldn't bring myself to. Anyway, emboldened by my new tubes, I decided Phil needed some chest wires. I employed some multi-strand electrical wire here, which required stripping back the silicon insulation. And as you would expect, a hole was then dug, glue was inserted, and the wires teased into place, looping from the chest to the power pack. On the other side of the model, I balanced out this detail with some fine jeweler's chain because, well, I was a little concerned the model wasn't really reading as chaos, and nothing says chaos in 40k more than chain. Well, there's spikes, but you probably shouldn't mix tentacles and spikes. Finally, to round things off, Phil grew himself another tentacle, this time protruding from the top of his torso over the top of the power pack. And here's Phil. Not your typical Plague Marine, but I think he still reads as Nurgle. And as far as kitbashes go, this one was surprisingly fast. Honestly, I wouldn't balk at having to make an entire army of these guys. Dryadic Infestation sounds fancy, but I think it's safe to say that our man's a bit of a tree hugger, or more accurately, he's being hugged by trees, from the inside. Perhaps it's not tree spirits or demons. After all, Papa Nurgle's known for his green fingers. That's green thumbs for those of you in the new world. Puns are always better when you have to explain. Anyway, after building and bifurcating the Mk3 Marine, I decided to replace his groin flap, that's a technical term, with something a bit more chaotic. And after carving away said flap, I located something suitable in the Billy Basic Chaos Space Marine kit. This chainy loincloth affair was extracted using the power of reciprocal sawblade action, and unburdened by the tyranny of legs, the rear was thinned using our old friend Friction, this time deployed by Old Man Dremel. Observant viewers will notice that he's got a bit of a belt alignment issue, but I'm going to hide that later, don't worry. After the alterations, I felt the torso looked a little short, so I added a scrap of 1mm styrene sheet to the bottom and tidied up the edges once Mr. Tamiya's finest had completed its melty business. I started the hiding process with a pouch on the hip, but then got rather distracted by the meat and potatoes of the build, the plant life. In order for said fauna to look like it burst forth from within, I manifested a hole, and cut in some surface cracks for hopefully obvious reasons. Now, a quick word from our sponsor, Trees. I use some spares from the Sylvaneth Ancient model, but there are loads of good options in that range, many of which can be picked up as spares from various bits retailer. But if you're making lots of these guys, might I suggest searching for etched plants, model tree armatures, or even seafoam as some sort of sane alternative. Since I'm in the world of plastic, I was able to bond my little thigh twig in place with liquid cement, and happy with the effect, I applied a bunch more to the model. I wanted this guy to have a blight launcher because who doesn't love a giant underslung grenade launcher? So that's what I gave him. On the other side of the model, I deployed a Plague Marine arm that appears to be holding a skull on a stick, chosen more to enable a striding forward pose rather than any great affinity for skull maracas. The shoulders then received their own floral arrangement, because I'm reliably informed that plants enjoy growing in an upward direction. And with the addition of a head, our tree fella is complete. Like Phil, this is another straightforward build that would scale pretty well if you're building yourself a legion. The same probably can't be said for these mushroom folk. Okay, so similar idea, very different aesthetic. And it's wholly original, unless you count a small indie game with a little-known TV adaptation co-starring a rarely seen bloke called Pedro. It would have gone very differently if they'd used the best Pedro. These definitely not cordyceps flavoured growths started out like most things, with a blob of green stuff. The process I devised for creating the layered mushroom look that's employed in the game and show starts with smushing on a moderately thick layer of putty. It doesn't really matter about neatness at this stage. I then cut in divisions for the layered ridges with a knife blade lubricated with Vaseline. These were then formed into deeper wedge shapes using a silicone sculpting tool, pressing in along the cut lines. Surface detail was created using a metal dental pick, but anything pointy will do. I added subtle dimples to the top faces of the ridges, and then scribed in radiating lines to the underside, like how they are on a mushroom. The process was repeated over the rest of the model, concentrating on the outside edges since I figured not much would grow in high friction areas. This had to be completed over a few different sessions, allowing plenty of time for the putty to harden. On the head, more fungus erupted, followed by a sprig of small twigs. These were simply more of that twisted 0.4mm copper wire, glued into a hole and then trimmed to an appropriate length. And once dry, the little twiglets were blended into the head with more green stuff. With the power pack in place and its head living its best life atop the torso, I succumbed to one of my long-running vices, adding unnecessary accoutrements to the top of the model. This Nurgle icon is from the AOS Chaos Knights kit, and I think it makes the whole power pack shebang look delightfully gothic. You may have noticed the loin chain affair down below, but apparently I didn't film that, so instead you're going to have to watch me struggle to attach some random pouches that I thought would help the silhouette of the model. And that's a mushroom. I'm not sure it looks too much like anything from that First of Us thing, but I don't really consider that a downside. What is a bit of a bummer is the time investment in the model, which in all honesty is probably best suited to a kill team rather than a whole army. If you do want a full army, might I interest Sir in a nice helping of traditional plague? Yep, here's a back to basic boils boy. Let's start things off by caving in our specimen's chest. I drilled a few holes and connected them together using a drill bit, a bit like a router, which is probably against the law, but it did get results. I then chipped away at the edge of the cavity to make the armour look a bit more like it's crumbling. I then filled the void, at least in part, with some green stuff, which would provide a suitable backing for some nice, friendly boils. Regular viewers will probably know where this is heading, but if you're new, these are nail art beads and they make excellent rivets, or in this case, the main shape of our plaguey lumps. These had a dab of CA glue on the back and were pressed straight into the uncured green stuff. I scattered a bunch more around the rest of the model, and then augmented the breakout with some tiny ball bearings, which do a pretty effective job of impersonating pustules on the surface of the armour. The key to making this whole effect work is in the blending. The best way to do this that I've found is with thinned plastic filler. I used Mr. Surfacer 500 mixed with Tamiya Extra Thin Cement and painted on a nice thin coat of splotchy coverage all around the breakout sites. Not only does this blend the edges of the beads into the armour, the extra texture, though subtle, really does help sell the illusion. The rest of the model went together as you would expect. Arms were added from the Mk3 Marines, with weapons from the Plague Marine kit, and of course, these limbs got their own boil treatment. I decided to add a bolter chain because I do like a good chain. This was again of the jewellery persuasion, with little sling hooks made from more of that copper wire. And once attached, the whole lot was solidified with a drop or two of thin CA glue. The head did need an outbreak, or so I convinced myself, so that was the next step on our journey to completion. And the old noggin was affixed in place in front of a power pack with another suspicious looking add-on glued on top. Honestly, I genuinely don't remember doing that one. Finally, I gave our Patient Zero some bling, made from a Nurgle icon and some more of that chain. Why? I couldn't tell you with any degree of certainty. What I can say though is, this is the end of the road for this build. 4 different approaches to infestation in the Warhammer universe. I've got no beef with the official Plague Marines, but I do think there's more than one way to skin a cat and presumably infect it. God, this script is disgusting.